then daily or even weekly price swings are not signals. They are noise. That doesn't mean they're irrelevant. It means they should not dictate decisions that are meant to span years. This is also where the idea of selling the top becomes dangerous. People convince themselves they'll sell when price hits a certain number without thinking about what the environment looks like at that moment. If price appreciation is driven by wholesale adoption and systemic stress, then volatility will be extreme, liquidity will be thin, execution will be chaotic, and moving large positions into fiat may not feel as clean or safe as people imagine. Another hard truth is this: extreme volatility often shows up before clarity, not after it. By the time the system feels stable and understandable, the largest moves are usually behind us. That's why the biggest gains historically went to people who tolerated uncertainty, not those who waited for confirmation. This doesn't mean holding blindly through everything. It means understanding why volatility exists and what it represents. In periods of transition, volatility is the system negotiating a new equilibrium. It's messy because there is no reference point yet. And here's the psychological trap most people fall into. They assume that because something is volatile, it must be unsafe. In reality, volatility is often highest when systems are most fragile, and fragility is what forces change. Stable systems do not reform themselves. This is why emotional discipline is not optional in this phase. You cannot improvise your strategy during a storm. If you don't know in advance why you're holding, what would make you reduce exposure, and what risks you're actually trying to avoid, the market will make those decisions for you, usually at your expense. For me, the reason I don't sell into this kind of volatility is not because I think price can only go up. It's because I understand what phase volatility belongs to. It belongs to transition, not resolution. Selling during transition often means stepping into a different kind of risk that isn't immediately visible. Now we need to talk about the two scenarios most people avoid thinking about because they're uncomfortable and they challenge the assumption that selling into fiat is automatically the safe move. These scenarios are not predictions. They are risk models, ways the system has behaved before under stress. The first scenario is aggressive currency debasement. When financial systems reach a point where debt, leverage, and social pressure collide, the most common response historically is money creation. It's not ideological, it's practical. Governments choose inflation over collapse because inflation is quieter, slower, and politically easier to manage. No major fiat currency in history has been immune to this outcome. People often say this time is different, but history is brutal on that belief. In periods of aggressive monetary expansion, holding fiat feels safe at first because numbers go up, bank balances grow, asset prices inflate, but purchasing power quietly erodes. What you can actually buy with that money shrinks, even though the number looks larger. This is how wealth is transferred without most people noticing until it's too late. If you sell a utility asset during a wholesale adoption phase and move entirely into fiat just before or during aggressive debasement, you may lock in a number while losing long-term purchasing power. That's not wealth preservation. That's a delayed loss. Utility assets, by contrast, are not claims on a government promise. They are tools. They exist to move value, provide liquidity, and operate inside systems that continue functioning even as currencies change. That doesn't make them immune to volatility, but it does give them a different relationship to inflation. The second scenario is more uncomfortable, and it's discussed even less: restricted access. In times of extreme stress, it's not just value that comes under pressure, it's access. History shows that during crises, banks don't always fail loudly. Sometimes they pause, they limit withdrawals, they close temporarily, they impose controls, and when that happens, governments step in as the solution. This is where retail digital currency systems enter the picture. Retail CBDCs are not introduced as abstract technological upgrades. They are introduced as responses to instability. They are framed as safer, faster, and more resilient alternatives when legacy systems struggle. And critically, they are often positioned as the only way to restore access. At that point, choice becomes limited. This is not about dystopian speculation. It's about understanding incentives. In a crisis, control and visibility become priorities for policymakers. Programmability, compliance, and traceability are features, not bugs, from their perspective. Whether individuals like that or not is secondary to whether the system can be stabilized. Now, here's the key connection most people miss. If you exit utility assets early, convert into fiat, and then encounter a system transition